Let me tell you, there's nothing quite like waking up to the sound of birds, the sun just starting to hit your half-built cabin, then getting slapped in the face with the blinding red and blue of police lights like your little piece of paradise just turned into a crime scene from a bad TV show. That's how my Wednesday started, sirens wailing, 3 squad cars skidding to a stop on the gravel, and my heart just pounding out of my chest. I set my hammer down, hands up like I was about to get arrested for building a treehouse, and watched as the officers stepped out, hands resting on their holsters, trying to look bored but also kind of tense. And behind them, like she was strutting onto the set of Law and Order, there she was, Brenda Harrington, president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, and honestly the star of her own personal reality show. "That's him!" she screeched, stabbing her perfectly manicured finger right at my chest like she was picking me out of a lineup. "That's the squatter illegally building on protected HOA land. If I'd had coffee in my mouth, I'd have spit it out right there." The lead officer, Davidson, tall, silver hair at his temples, probably seen it all, came over real calm, real official. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some ID and any permits you've got for this construction." You could tell he'd rather be anywhere else. I pulled out my wallet, and just for kicks, the folder I'd started carrying around everywhere thanks to Brenda's little stunts. "Officer Davidson," I said, pointing at his badge, "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. This is my property." Brenda barreled forward, face red and furious, snapping. "Don't listen to him. This whole lakefront is Maplewood Estates." "I have documentation." Davidson held up a hand, not in the mood for a shouting match, and started going through my paperwork one by one. His eyebrows crept up the further he went, deed survey, water rights going all the way back to 1922. You could practically see his attitude shift from "here we go again" to "oh, this is gonna be good." He finally turned to Brenda, voice so calm it almost stung. "Ma'am, according to these records, this gentleman owns not just this parcel, but the entire riverfront from mile marker 7 to 12. That includes every bit of water access." Brenda's jaw dropped so hard you could have heard it. But hey, this circus didn't start today. It started 3 months ago, the day I broke ground on the patch of heaven my granddad left me, 20 acres of untouched lakefront bought back when Eisenhower was president. It bordered Maplewood Estates, which only popped up in the 90s, but my land never once under their HOA. Not for a single day. I'd dreamed about this cabin forever. A place to breathe off the grid solar panels, big old wraparound deck, maybe a little dock for fishing. After 2 decades hunched over a keyboard as a software engineer, I was done with city noise. I wanted wind in the trees, not horns on asphalt. Trouble started like it always does on day 2. I was staking out the foundation, sun barely up, when a golf cart came roaring down the dirt path like an invading army, dust flying. Brenda popped out, arms crossed, looking like she was about to write me up for war crimes. "Excuse me," she barked. "Not even a hello. What do you think you're doing?" I wiped my brow, tried to stay civil. "Building a cabin." "Can I help you?" she shot back. "This is HOA property. You can't just start construction without board approval." I almost laughed already, feeling my patience wearing thin. "Ma'am, this is my land, not HOA." She laughed, a nasty little sound that bounced off the pines. "All lakefront access here is under Maplewood Estates jurisdiction. I don't know what scam you're running, but I'm shutting it down. You ever have a conversation so ridiculous you wonder if you're being punked?" That was me right then. And that was just the opening shot in what became a 3-month campaign of pure harassment. Every day I'd find a new notice taped to my tools: "Cease construction, unauthorized activity." Half of them printed from free internet templates looking about as official as Monopoly money. I tossed them in the burn pile, didn't even flinch. Then she started trespassing. My trail cameras caught her sneaking around, snapping photos, measuring things, pretending to be some kind of crime scene tech. One morning I caught her in my freshly poured foundation, clipboard in hand, totally startled when I called her out. "Brenda, you're trespassing again." She spun, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. "I'm documenting HOA violations. The noise is disturbing our residents' peace and tranquility." I had to laugh. The nearest house is half a mile away and it's Tuesday morning. Her lips got tight. We'll see what our lawyers have to say. Spoiler, the lawyers never showed. But the board members started rolling in, standing at what they thought was the property line, snapping photos and muttering like they were at a town gossip convention. Then she brought in the big guns, introduced some kid as the HOA environmental compliance officer. Pretty sure it was just her nephew in a golf shirt, but hey, you gotta admire the commitment. The breaking point, I showed up one morning to find brand new signs hammered into the dirt, private property, Maplewood Estates, HOA. She actually claimed my land as hers. That was it. I started carrying my deeds everywhere. So when she showed up again, I was ready. Those signs need to come down, I told her. She just smirked. Make me. I've called the real authorities this time. And that's how I wound up with police on my lawn and Brenda shouting, "The police are coming to remove you from our property." Yeah, that happened. So we're back to flashing lights. Davidson flipping through my paperwork. Brenda turning every shade of purple. "This can't be right," she sputtered. "The HOA owns all water access. We've used that beach for 20 years. Davidson was stone cold. Using it and owning it are two different things, ma'am. Actually, by these records, your HOA has been trespassing on his land for the past 2 decades. I spread my survey map across the cruiser, showed the lines pointed at the boundaries. My grandfather owned everything from here to here, beach hiking, trailboat launch. It's all mine." Brenda's clipboard shook in her hands. Officers trying not to laugh. One whispered something about another, one of those HOA presidents, and yeah, you could tell they'd seen this before. Brenda, desperate, tried again. "But we maintain that beach. We pay for sand deliveries, upkeep every year on my property," I said, "without permission. That's vandalism, technically." Davidson nodded. "Sir, do you want to press trespassing charges?" Brenda's face went sheet white. I let her off easy. "Not this time, officer. But I'll be putting up official boundary markers and anyone crossing them after today will be prosecuted." Brenda shrieked, "You can't do this. Our property values depend on lake access." I shrugged. "Should have thought of that before you tried to steal my land." The officers gave her a warning about filing false reports, then rolled out. Brenda just stood there clutching her clipboard, watching her little empire turn to dust. That night, word ripped through Maplewood Estates faster than a grass fire. My phone exploded, neighbors, board members. Everybody wanted to talk about the lake access. By the next morning, 15 people showed up at my site, not with pitchforks, thankfully, but all looking like they'd just gotten called to the principal's office. One guy in khakis, tucked-in shirt, stepped up. "Mr. Peterson, I'm Jack Sullivan, Vice President of the HOA Board. We'd like to discuss the lake access issue." I barely looked up from my work. "Nothing to discuss. It's my land. Always has been." Jack nodded, shot a death glare at Brenda, who was hiding in the back like a kid in trouble. "We understand that now," he said, "but we're hoping for some arrangement. The community's been using that beach for years. And I've been paying taxes on it for years," I said. A woman in yoga pants piped up. "We didn't know. Brenda told us the HOA owned everything to the water line." The looks that shot Brenda's way, man, you could cut the tension with a chainsaw. Jack announced an emergency board meeting for that night. "Brenda, you'll need to prepare a full report explaining how this happened." From what my neighbor Tom told me, that meeting was like a live-action soap opera. "You should have seen it," he said the next morning, leaning over my fence, still laughing. People were furious. They demanded to know how Brenda could mess up something so huge. Turns out she never looked at the records, just assumed the HOA owned it because they'd always maintained it. He grinned. "First time I've seen people yelling at a board meeting that wasn't Brenda herself." She tried to blame the old board, the county, even me for not correcting her sooner, but nobody was buying it. They voted no confidence unanimously except for her own vote. Out as president, just like that. Jack's running the show now. I figured that was the end. But nope, 3 days later, I'm out putting up a nice split-rail fence. Nothing aggressive, just clear boundaries like my lawyer advised. That's when Brenda pulled her last stunt. 2 in the morning, my trail camera caught her trying to yank out my fence post with her Mercedes. Got the bumper tangled, dragged 50 feet of fencing, and ended up nose down in a ditch. I pressed charges, destruction of property, trespassing, vandalism. Judge was not amused. In court, Brenda looked tiny, stripped of all that bluster. The jury watched footage from my cameras big as life on the screen. The judge leaned over glasses low and said, "Mrs. Harrington, you've shown a disturbing pattern of harassment and criminal behavior. Quite shocking for someone in a position of community leadership, or former leadership, I should say." The verdict landed like a drop safe, $12,000 in fines, restitution, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order. Brenda nearly choked. $12,000, I was protecting our community. The judge slammed his gavel. You weren't protecting your community, Mrs. Harrington. You were protecting your ego. Consider yourself lucky I'm not adding jail time. And just like that, the queen of Maplewood Estates was dethroned, brought down, not by a rival, but by her own stubbornness, her clipboard, and a guy who just wanted to build a cabin on the land his grandfather left him. So now the lake's quiet again. My fence stands tall, my cabin's coming along, and Maplewood's got a brand new president who actually reads the property lines. But let me ask you, who was really in the wrong here? The guy defending what's his, or the neighbor who thought rules didn't apply to her? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever tangled with an HOA or stood your ground when someone tried to push you off your own land? Let's hear your stories about justice. What would you have done? And if you got a wild HOA tale, I want to hear that too.